مساء الخير, good morning, good evening, good afternoon for all of you. Since 1982, Al-Liqa Center for Religious Heritage and Cultural Studies in the Holy Land has launched on two programs. The first one is the Christian Muslim heritage, and the second one is the local theology. We hold two major conferences in Jerusalem and in Bethlehem on contemporary issues that are related to our contextual situation and developments. Since 2015, after the death of the founder, the late Dr. Julius Khoury, Professor Dr. Yousef Zaknoun continues to lead this significant work in the Palestinian society. We continue to have the conferences, and we issue the magazine both in Arabic and in English. We address, in the last two conferences, we addressed the issue of extremism, that is a perversion for true religion, and we also held a conference on bioethics that answers the queries of our grassroots. This year and today, we want to delve into the freedom of thought and the freedom of belief. Why? For two reasons. We are witnessing a dawn of a free speech recession. Gandhi considered free speech as absolutely necessary for a human being to breathe the oxygen of liberty. Secondly, freedom of religion is fundamental for all other freedoms. I would like here to give two important things. I'm really sorry that we have 9 solid men at this time and in this panel. The reason is not that we ignored our dear sisters, the women, but 3 women whom we asked to contribute apologized at the last minute. And I am sorry for this, and that's not the policy of Al-Liqa or UPF, but this happened this time in such a way which we regret that it didn't succeed. Secondly, I'm thankful that this conference is in partnership between Al-Liqa and the Universal Peace Federation. As the chairman of the board of Al-Liqa, I would like to thank Dr. Zaknoun, the preparation committee, and Bernadette Murra for planning for this conference in a professional way. I would like also to thank Dr. Thomas Walsh, the CEO of UPF, and all his staff who diligently are providing to all of us the technical and translation assistance. Thank you very much for this partnership. And of course, we are ready to partner with those with those organizations who really share our values. I would like to thank all of you who are the panelists from all over the world. I don't dare to name them because the countries you come from, but we are happy that it is an international conference from all over the world, but we have a solid local panelists who are with us to give also the Palestinian point of view. I'm looking forward to be edified by the wisdom of all our panelists and lecturers. Please, for those who speak Arabic, I would like to tell you that push the button of Spanish because the computer does not understand yet Arabic. Put on Spanish so that you can get the Arabic translation. And secondly, for all of you who are present all over the world, you are heartily welcome from Jerusalem, but at the same time we ask you to put your questions for the panelists in the chat, and Miss Bernadette Murra will be at the end, introducing all the questions that are presented. I would like here again now to introduce two important persons who are the motor of all this, conference. The first one is Professor Dr. Yousef Zaknoun. He is the director of AL-Liqa Center for Religious and Heritage Studies in the Holy Land. He is professor of philosophy and ethics of life at Bethlehem University, and he is the director of Cardinal Martini Leadership Institute, Bethlehem University. He and myself,
former سيدنا.
but he and
Last
myself
year,
are also
thank you.
co-founder in 1982 of AL-Liqa, you see, and we continue to believe in this message. I think also His Excellency Bishop William was also with us since the very beginning. Also, I would like to introduce Dr. Thomas Walsh, Chairman of the Universal Peace Federation. He is also a co-chair of the Coalition of Faith-Based Organizations at USA, and the chairman of Sunhak Peace Prize Foundation and the World Peace Road Foundation. He is the executive editor of Dialogue and Alliance, member of the Board of Trustees of the University of Bridgeport, and serves as on the International Council of the World Association of Non-Governmental Organizations. Both of you are welcome, and I'll give you the chair, but most important, both of you are my friends, and that is much more important than any other thing. May God bless this conference and bless all of you.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Please, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Bishop Munib, Younan, for that kind introduction and for your opening remarks, which were very thoughtful and directly apt to our discussion today. I noted that we are in a freedom of belief and thought recession, and I jotted down your term. On behalf of UPF, I'm very happy to be part of today's program and to be working once again in partnership with AL-Liqa Center for Religious Heritage and Cultural Studies in the Holy Land. I know that we all have concern at this time about the crisis unfolding in Ukraine. It forms yet another grim backdrop to our deliberations. We pray for peace in Ukraine and in the Holy Land. Our thematic focus is extremely important: freedom of thought and belief, theological, philosophical, political, and sociological perspectives. As much as we affirm the values of freedom of speech, freedom of press, academic freedom, freedom of religions, these core freedoms are continually threatened. They are not absolute rights, for they are held in check by the harm principle, that is, do no harm. And it's generally recognized that slander, sedition, or shouting fire in a crowded theater are not protected. Misleading or false advertisements that bring harm are not permitted. In the United States, we cherish our First Amendment rights, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, end quote. I thought also to quote from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Articles 18 and 19. Article 18 states, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and this right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. End quote of Article 18. Article 19, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Freedom of belief, thought, religion are core, indeed universal values. As I said previously, however, they are held in check by the harm principle. You know, in recent times, there has emerged the category of hate speech and efforts to create what are called safe spaces, where what is perceived as offensive, disturbing, or hateful speech may be prohibited. This creates challenges for our traditional understanding of freedom of speech, freedom of belief. In bygone years, we were taught to practice good manners and to be respectful in our use of speech. In times such as ours, times of political polarization, identity politics, even geopolitical tensions, freedom of thought and belief are threatened. The rise of the internet, social media have further complicated our lives, while at the same time opening up opportunities for freedom of expression. Another great threat to freedom of thought and belief is the rise of authoritarian systems of government, which control the media, suppress dissent, and punish opposition parties. We live at a time when many anticipate the ongoing decline of liberal or Western democracy, which traditionally affirmed the open society and these core freedoms: freedom of religion, thought, and belief. This is an immense challenge of our time. Hence, our conversation today is not merely of academic interest, but is related directly to some of the core challenges we face today as humanity. I thank all our panelists for joining us today, and I look forward to hearing from each of them and to our discussion at the end of our panel sessions. I turn it over to you, Dr. Zaknoun.
Thank you. I switch to Arabic directly. مساء الخير من بيت لحم والقدس ومن فلسطين لجميع المشاركين في هذا المؤتمر.
Good evening to everyone from Palestine, from Bethlehem, from Palestine. Hoping that circumstances will get better. I will not make a presentation, but I will be the moderator. I would like to thank all the lecturers for responding to our invitation and for their collaboration with the AL-Liqa Center. I would like to thank Dr. Walsh, the head of the International AL-Liqa Center. In 1920 was sentenced and he was sent to exile. Because of his culture that was planning to the changement of politics and culture. He was famous for the dialogue. And since that time, we are still finding the regimes and the systems and the parties opposing roughly the free thought and the free belief and the pluralism. We all know, brothers, there is no dignity for men without freedom and without political freedom. And this is a must in order to protect.
وانطلاقا من هذه القاعدة يشرفني أن أقدم السادة الأساتذة في هذه الأمسية وإجراء هذا المؤتمر.
And this is why I would like to present the lecturers.
وقد ارتأينا أن تكون المحاضرة الأولى مقدمة فلسفية عن الموضوع.
And the first lecture is a philosophical one, dealing with subjects from the East and the West. I would like to start with Dr. Raed Masih from Bethlehem University.
دكتور رائد عبد المسيح أستاذ الفلسفة وأخلاقيات الطب في جامعة بيتلحم. الكلمة لك.
نعم، مرحبا للجميع، مساء الخير أو صباح الخير الأماكن المختلفة.
Very good evening or good morning. The time is different for each of the attendants. And I'm happy to talk to you today. The speech you have the
impact of philosophy and culture on freedom of thought and belief.
I will talk about the importance of philosophy.
Philosophy and the matter of culture that is related to the thought and belief. The philosophy that affects negatively is not philosophy. Having a thought in a certain time.
نقاط رئيسية راح أتحدث عن 3 محاور رئيسية.
I will speak about 3 important points. About what is the philosophy, especially our human history that knew the impact of philosophy on the human soul. I will ask about the progress that leads us to a real human civilization. What does it mean to be a human? What does the word insan, man, means? A lot of time we say human deeds. Because humans are different from the others. I will start with our understanding of philosophy. Philosophy and its role in giving space to freedom. As we read to Dr. Thomas,
الوثيقة للعهد الدولي الخاص بالحقوق المدنية والسياسية اللي موجودة البند 18 و 19 أيضا إنه لكل
as it is mentioned in the declaration and the articles 1, everyone has the right to give his opinion without being bothered. When we speak about a topic that is related to freedom, here there is philosophical questions. Does it exist? Does it a total freedom? Philosophy invites to ask, to analyze, to study deeply.
الإنسان الفكرية وزي ما شفنا كمان دكتور يوسف قدم مثال سقراط اللي هو أيضا نقطة ومرحلة مفصلية بين
To study the progress of the human mind, and Dr. Yousef gave as example Socrates.
الآن هذه التساؤلات اللي تدعو إلى تفكير نقدي، تفكير تحليلي. أحيانا يكون
These questions that give critical and analysis about an idea. The impact of philosophy and its influence, because it contributed in the evolution of the humanity. They gave birth to the thought, to the logic, to the analyze, to the political thought, to the religious thought. It seeks a truth. Where is the truth? Is it a total truth? Or every person or each person has his own truth? There is different philosophical trends. The veracity, the truth is related with the material. Some they say there is the rational mind, and as René Descartes, who says, I think, so I exist before the material. There is a lot of questions, an ongoing dialogue, a dialogue that is looking to find something common, oppressing the other or challenging the other in a negative way. We can move from a period to another. Some they were oppressed, they were sentenced to death because of an idea in different ways, because of an idea, a religious idea, a social idea. After the Second World War, 1942, man realized there is right for man. One should defend his rights. During the First World War and the Second World War, 90 million people were killed, hoping that it will not be repeated in Ukraine and Russia, between Ukraine and Russia, that the history will not repeat itself.
الفكر الفلسفي يعطي تغيير. نعم، الفكر الفلسفي يبحث باستمرار، هي لا تقوم فقط على مرحلة ولا
The philosophy
على نظرة مؤقتة
search continuously, evolve continuously.
شيء محدد وتقول اكتفيت ووصلت، فهي في استمرارية، وفي أيضا هناك عطاء.
It's an ongoing search for the welfare. That's what was mentioned by Socrates, by Aristotle. And this is what was said by Dr. Thomas. So one should look for the welfare of the individual, of the humanity, the environment. Changement is occurring. The impact. The impact, it looks like a physical term.
فلما نقول تأثير، مدى قياس هذا التأثير وكيف نقيس هذا التأثير أحيانا لا يحدث في
measuring the impact depends on the time. There is a lot of sources that changed the life of man, like Newton. Others, they came later on. For every action, there is a reaction. The changement didn't take place at the same time. It appeared in the 20th century. With the changement.
هذا التأثير أو هذا التغيير الحاصل نتيجة الفكر الفلسفي، نتيجة التساؤل.
This changement that is taking place because of the philosophy and the right in expressing.
نعرف إنه في مسار الحياة الإنسانية والتاريخ أيضا كان في هناك ما نسميه
and the progress of human life, and in history, it used to be a lot of martyrs who were killed because of a belief or a thought, and they were persecuted. Dr. Yousef mentioned Socrates at the beginning, who was one of them. Giordano Bruno also.
لم يعطى حرية الفكر في التعبير، ولو أنه كان في بعض الحالات مناقض أو منافي لعقيدة دينية في ذلك الزمان. سبينوزا نفس الكلام، باروخ سبينوزا.
Yes.
أفكار يعني جيدة، لكن نوعا ما تم تهميشه واستهزاء فيه وهكذا.
So all these, they were maltreated, imprisoned, or killed because of their thoughts. After studying
جرب أن يضع منهج الشك هذا في موضوع
and studying the doubt, he began to study the doubt and to put roots for the Arabic philosophy. And in 1927, he wrote his book about the mind. He challenged with his mind. He was trialed. Then he changed in his book. It used to be a lot of people defending freedom and calling for freedom, like Mandela, who was himself killed. He faced the persecution with right.
منافية لمبدأ إنساني، حق في الحرية، حق في عدم استعباد إنسان لآخر أو شعب لآخر، كما هو الحال عندنا هون. يعني إحنا ندعو لحق للحرية، لا نطالب بشيء ما فيه حق يعني. وبالتالي قضية هذا الفكر والنضال كان له ثمن طبعا. وهذا
The
الأمر
price of this mind and the resistance.
دعا لمبدأ إنسانية، مبدأ حرية، وطبعا نعرف بحياته تم اغتياله لأفكار اللي كانت موجودة عنده في ذلك الزمن. إذن الأفكار أو الفكر الحر أو حرية الفكر وطريقة التفكير لإيجاد معنى، لإيجاد
the freedom of thought
مطلقة تصلح لكل زمان لكل مكان.
to find
بهذا الاتجاه اللي
values
سقراط ببداية الطريق لا يزال اليوم قائم.
for which Socrates called since the beginning.
يعني أرسطو يتحدث بشكل كبير عن قضية.
Aristotle speaks a lot about virtue, about the changement, about the instinct of man. How does he use his mind, and how is he able to make his mind overcome his instinct? That to say, that is a man, and these are the features of man.
Space Age Technology, Stone Age Politics. Space Age Technology, Stone Age Politics. ويقول الكاتب
and the writer says
هذا الأمر، هل نحن فعلا في تقنياتنا وصلنا للفضاء، لكن في معاملاتنا الإنسانية لا نزال يبدو أنه لا نزال في فكر العصر الحجري في القتال.
with our technology we reached the space, but with our behavior we still greed.
هذا تساؤلات تبقى موجودة.
There is a lot of questions.
اللي توجه لمفهوم الآخر واللي وضع الآخر كأولوية بدل مني، يعني الآخر هو الأهم مني، بمفهوم أو بمبدأ الفلسفة الأولى اللي كانت الفلسفة.
Also, there's another writer that speaks about the other. The other is more important than me. He calls it the first ethic.
طريقة السلوك المعاملة، وهذا ما نقوله احنا في العربية، نقول الدين معاملة.
We did say in Arabic, religion is behaving with the other, is behavior. How to behave in society. And these thoughts reflect in the way that we imply them. It's reflected in the social life and the state and the city everywhere. It's very important to have the dialogue, the mutual respect, understanding these meanings and the human values, and to evolve to the level that was said by Aristotle. What does it mean to be a human? It's always a question in the philosophical mind. Being more free, that means being more responsible. I'm responsible on the environment, responsible on the other. responsible on the values. This responsibility that comes from my freedom, from my awareness. It's said by Abraham, there is a say by Abraham Lincoln.
Until there shall no longer be a doubt that all men are created free and equal. هذه كانت مبعوثة July 10th 1858 اللي موجودة بحديثه بشيكاغو للينكولن، اللي معناها بالعربي: أنا أترككم بهذا الضوء اللي هو المنارة للحرية تحترق في أحضانكم حتى لا يبقى هناك شك أنه كل الناس، كل إنسان خلقوا أحرار ومتساويين.
All the people are born free and equal.
شكرا، أشكرك. يعني معلش، يعني مرات بنسامح على 3-4 دقائق، بنسامح مش مشكلة.
أيوة شكرا.
أوكي، شكرا جزيلا دكتور رائد. ومثل ما قلت في بداية الجلسات، النقاش أو الأسئلة تطرح لاحقا. يشرفنا في هذا المساء أيضا أن نستضيف شخصية متميزة، والدكتور يان فيجل. أتأمل أنه لفظته مضبوط دكتور يان. دكتور يان هو شخصية متمرسة في العلاقات الدولية بشكل عام وفي التكامل الأوروبي بشكل خاص. مثل سلوفاكيا بصفته كبير المفوضين الحكوميين بشأن الانضمام إلى الاتحاد الأوروبي، ثم أصبح لاحقاً أول مفوض للاتحاد الأوروبي في سلوفاكيا، مسؤولاً عن سياسات مجتمع المعلومات والمشاريع، ولاحقاً عن التعليم والثقافة والشباب وتعدد اللغات، بالإضافة بمسؤوليات سابقة النائب الأول لرئيس الوزراء ووزير النقل والبناء والإقليم وغيرها. خبرة طويلة. ونشكر حضورك دكتور يان. محاضرة الدكتور يان ستكون حول النظم السياسية وحرية الفكر في السياق الغربي. تفضل لك الكلمة.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaknoun. I hope you can hear me well. I am sending my regards, and can you hear me?
Yes, very good.
Yes, we hear you very well.
Thank you for feedback. I'm sending my greetings, as it was already mentioned, from Bratislava, Slovakia, Central Europe. Peace in Europe is not automatic and self-evident, and currently we face war in the neighborhood in Ukraine. So this sort of activities where we discuss justice, human dignity, principles of international law are very important, and therefore I want to congratulate the UPF and AL-Liqa, and also wish that we have more such activities and protagonists in order to learn, to educate for peace and reconciliation, not only in Europe, but also worldwide. Please allow me to add some reflections on freedom of thought and belief from the political and within the Western context, as I was invited. We used to use here the abbreviation for freedom of religion or belief, which actually represents the triangle or trinity of three freedoms: freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. It is very important to understand interrelatedness and connection of these three dimensions, and not to separate it. This principle and expression is not Western made, but universal. And it is, as I said, based on foundational principle of human rights, which is human dignity. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and also the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, use the expression of these three: freedom of thought, conscience, and religion in singular. And the same applies for the most ratified human rights treaty, which is, I suppose you may know, but it's UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. There is the same formula. Other international texts follow the same example. For example, the Intergovernmental Association of Southeast Asian Nations, so-called ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, then the Arab Charter of Human Rights, and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. I like the expression which was put into a paper of Professor Rafael Domingo. He writes, I quote, "Freedom of thought is required for the human person as a rational being, which is homo rationalis. Freedom of conscience is required for the human person as a moral being, homo moralis. And freedom of religion is required for the human person as a religious being, which is homo religiosus in Latin. And we refer here to the cognitive and operative structure of the same human being, which means of all human beings. Freedom of thought cannot be compartmentalized or artificially isolated, and much less, let alone monopolistically attributed to non-religious believers as a separate human right. This is, in our view, a distorted interpretation of the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, with the intention to create artificial dichotomies and politically diminish the relevance of religion in the public sphere. While agnostic or atheist scientists and dissidents are holders of the right to freedom of thought, not less, any Christian, Muslim, Jew, or person that believes in another religion, scientists or dissidents are also entitled to freedom of thought. To portray freedom of thought as the proper and exclusive space for and of free thinkers is a fallacy and contrary to the universality of human rights. Every person, religious or non-religious believer, is entitled to one freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. It is not by chance that the European Court on Human Rights declared that freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and I quote the court here, the beginning, is in its religious dimension one of the most vital elements that go to make up identity of believers and their conception of life. But it is also a precious asset for atheists, agnostics, skeptics, and the unconcerned, end of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, freedom of religion and belief, as I said at the beginning, FORB, is a condition of good governance, important for believers and non-believers, for all. It is civilizational objective and criterion, representing freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. For protection is a precondition of sustainable development. And why? Development is another name for peace. And peace, as we know, is fruit of justice. Justice is based on human rights for all. And for, as we can notice in the catalog of the UDHR, is very central right. Article 18 of the UDHR is in the middle of all universal human rights. It combines our freedom implemented individually and in community, collectively, in private and in public. It is actually a litmus test of all human rights. If it is not respected in society, other rights suffer the same fate. I can speak a lot about it as I lived half of my life in the totalitarian Czechoslovakia. 4 represents actually human dignity, and this is foundational principle of human rights. Dignity expresses my uniqueness, originality, my rights, but also my duties. I repeat, also my duties towards the other and towards the community I am living in. We tend to forget the second side of the same coin, obligations and duties. Me as citizen, as husband, as father, and without duties, how can we claim rights? Somebody has to care about this balance in society. Second point is the global situation, because this was preferably now about the understanding and importance of 4. Let's speak a bit about the global situation and then about to do or what to do. 4 was for decades of years neglected, abandoned, misinterpreted human right. Today, up to 79% of global population live in countries with high or very high obstacles against 4. It is according well-renowned Pew Research Center. Second bad news with this first is that trends are worrying and oppression is on rise. Drivers of persecution and oppression are totalitarian and autocratic regimes, proponents of religious nationalism, violent extremism, terrorists, and non-state actors. Few examples. In 2019, the United Kingdom FCO, the Foreign Commonwealth Office, commissioned a special report. It says that up to 250 million of Christians are persecuted today. The report calls it the most shocking abuse of human rights today. Muslim Rohingyas in Myanmar suffer systematic persecution, like millions of Uyghurs in China. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, including in the West. My nomination to be special envoy of the European Union for promotion was a reaction to the genocide of Yazidis, Christians, Shia Muslims, and other communities committed by ISIS forces in Iraq and in Syria. Baha'is suffer in Iran. Pressure is growing against groups from A to Z. What it means to groups from atheists to Zoroastrians. Atheism may lead to capital punishment in 13 countries, conversion in 22 states of the world, and over 70 countries in the world has blasphemy laws, some very stringent like Pakistan or Mauritania. If one minority is persecuted, many others are persecuted as well. And for too long, 4 was like forgotten orphan, a priority neither in foreign policy nor in development cooperation. But there are also good news. 4 awakening is growing. In 2013, the EU guidelines of 28 member states, then still with the United Kingdom, have been adopted. In 2014, the first intergroup for 4 and religious tolerance was created in the European Parliament. From the same time, there is a global IPP4, so-called International Parliamentarians Platform. Since 2015, there is international contact group of 4 diplomats from growing number of countries. And then since 2016, there was the first ever special envoy for promotion. After that, several member states of the European Union established their respective ambassadors, special representatives, and envoys, like Hungary, United Kingdom, Germany, Denmark, Lithuania, Poland, Netherlands, Czech Republic, Slovakia. There were already 2 ministerial summits in Washington, D.C. with concrete commitments. testimonials, networks, side events, over 100 governments and up to 1,000 religious and civil society participants met in 2020 for that summit. It then continued next year in Warsaw. We will see next year a summit and ministerial in London. I mean this year, 2022. And in 2020, those like-minded countries and governments established International Religious Freedom Alliance. There are today 35 countries members of this important new alliance. In time of growing tensions, violence, and conflicts, we have witnessed unprecedented rise of religious initiatives for peaceful coexistence. This was, as you recall, Amman message as a reaction to 9/11 and Beslan killing in 2004. Then common word between us and you from 2007. And also recent initiatives like Marrakesh Declaration of 2016 on treatment of religious minorities in Muslim-majority countries. Beirut Declaration 2017 called Faith for Rights, initiated by the UN Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights. Or I will mention Peigam-e Pakistan, which means in translation, message from Pakistan, which is declaration of thousands of scholars and imams against violent extremism and abuse of religion in 2018. The most recent and very interesting was Abu Dhabi Declaration on Human Fraternity and Peaceful Coexistence. It was signed by Pope Francis and Grand Imam of Al-Aqsa Al-Tayyib in February 2019. Under Poland-led proposal, the United Nations General Assembly agreed to devote the first ever International Day of commemorating victims of acts of religious violence. It's every year on August 22nd. And the third part of my presentation for you, dear ladies and gentlemen, is what to do. And basically, to do means to promote equal citizenship. I visited many countries in my working missions. This gave me closer access to human suffering, dialogue with many leaders, communities, organizations, academia. I am convinced we need for climate change. Why? Because again, situation is already alarming and trends are worrying. And it concerns millions of people in many regions of the world. So like with environment, when the situation is bleaky, negative, and worsening, we agreed to have a climate change policy. We need something similar, parallel, for all. Foundational principle of human rights is dignity, as I said, and culture of human dignity is based on respect of the universal principle. We are all different in identity, and we are all equal in dignity. Dignity is crucially important, for example, for Christians. Vatican Council II major document on religious freedom is called Dignitatis Humanae. For Muslims, it is Quranic concept of karama, dignity. For adherents of Bible, it is Imago Dei and Medaber al-Kavod in Hebrew tradition. European Union Charter of Fundamental Rights starts with dignity as the first out of 4 main values. And Chapter 1, Article 1 starts with protection of human dignity. In India, the most populous country with secular constitution, in preamble we can find call for dignity. I had a good experience when sharing these principles at Punjab Institute of Islamic Studies at the University of Lahore in Pakistan, or in Ahfat University for Women in Sudan. human dignity may serve as a meeting point for both religious and secular humanists. Punta del Este Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone, Everywhere from December 2018 is the recent proof. I am happy that many scholars, experts, and activists signed up to commemorate the 70 years of the UDHR, but also to commit and to recommit to its foundational principle. I will afford to share with you the address of this declaration because I think it's very important for the like-minded people. Yes. Document is still open for signatures, and there are a growing number of signatories, hundreds of scholars, experts, and leaders. Ethical principle of equal dignity is departure point for socio-political principle of equal citizenship, or inclusive, dignified one. So from ethics of equal dignity, we should move towards politics and culture of equal citizenship. And this brings us to a pluralist society, like a mosaic, to a civil state based on equal citizenship. I think this is the best option for our countries, like for future of Iraq when I visited this country still during war. Fair, civil, secular state is a blessing for all and for different faiths coexistence. United Europe, it is a lesson on common good, winning over hatred and violence. It grew from definition of common ground, understanding, definition of common values and interests, bringing common good and then common future. It's reality. I know well from my missions that the EU is welcomed when not teaching or preaching, but sharing, when not imposing, but proposing. Ladies and gentlemen, evil today is very successful because it has very widely spread and influential allies. These are indifference, ignorance, and fear. These three, they are siblings of evil. Therefore, we must learn how to live in diversity, not only to coexist in diversity. And we need to nurture allies of good, engagement, education, and simply human courage. Engagement, education, and courage against indifference, ignorance, and fear. I want to conclude by revoking that I was invited to my position of Special Envoy in 2016 in reaction to genocide in the Middle East. And year 2016 marked century of genocides because 100 years ago there was another genocide here in Europe. There were too many within those 100 years. And what is coming next? Is it century of hope or century of continuity, business as usual? Therefore, I repeat, we need a change, substantial change. We must stick to the commitment, never again. And therefore, we need for climate change. For protection and promotion is in our best interest and global responsibility. This is preventive antidote against injustice, persecution, and refugee crisis. I wish the UPF and AL-Liqa that this very timely and important forum brings trust and inspiration into our countries, institutions, and societies, and that it serves to our common objectives. Peace be with you, and thank you all.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور فيجل على حضورك المميز وعلى هذا الإسهاب. تشرفنا بحضورك هذا المساء، ولعلنا نتواصل في التعاون سوية من أجل الخير العام ومن أجل خير الشباب.
Thank you, Dr. Figel, for your presence, for your presentation, for being among us this night.
قبل ما أواصل اللقاء مباشرة
Before proceeding,
الأستاذ زياد الصائغ من لبنان، ولكن وصلت طيارتك على جنيف. الحمد لله على السلامة، أهلا وسهلا فيك. نور أستاذ زياد، أهلا وسهلا فيك. الحمد لله.
we see Dr. Ziad with us now.
أهلا وسهلا أستاذ. المحاضر الثالث أستاذ متميز في البحث العلمي.
The next lecturer,
رئيس الشبكة العربية للتسامح,
the head of the Arabic Net for Forgiveness, Dr. Zayad al-Barghouti, with the freedom of thought and belief. So it's a brief about the professors, about their rich biography. It's 2 words of their rich biography. I thank the AL-Liqa, Dr. and the UPF, Universal Peace Federation, Dr. Thomas, and all the lecturers. Yes, the lecture in philosophy is very important. Some years ago, I made a campaign in order to teach again the philosophy in Palestinian schools, but I didn't succeed. I thank Dr. Figel for his rich lecture, hoping that the Israeli occupation will take end and to have peace between Russia and Ukraine. Here it's about freedom of thought and belief.
كمدخل لهذه الورقة لابد من الإشارة إلى أن المفهومين الواردين في هذا العنوان، مفهوم الحرية والدولة.
Here, the freedom and the state. The freedom is not very spread in the area, and it didn't get the importance, its due importance. And the importance about the freedom is during the contemporary time, the modern time, and it's concerning more the group than the individual. The freedom of religiosity, which is concerning groups, which is more important here than the individual one.
أما بالنسبة للدولة
concerning the state,
معروف الظروف التاريخية التي نشأت
we know that the historical circumstances in which the contemporary state take birth during this geostrategic situation.
أنتج علاقة خاصة.
This situation gave birth to a special relationship between religion and politics. The legislation in the Islam, and even which is closer to the Judaism than to Christianity, has presented a thought that gave birth to a state that is related to the ideology of the state.
في المجتمعات الإسلامية يعني أكثر من المجتمعات المسيحية.
So the state, most of which arose in our region under special circumstances, which has more to do with religion than with the state.
بعض الصراعات مع
sometimes in order to justify conflicts with other lands.
منطقتنا وبين الدين والهوية ذلك الارتباط.
Historically, Islam and its content of legislation between the identity and the religion.
في أوروبا سابقا لكنها عندنا وبنسبة كبيرة ذهبت باتجاه الموقف السلبي من الدين.
The bound that has decisively affected the attitude toward the freedom of belief. Active circles in this educated elites were influenced by secularism and for the victory of freedom, while here
نأتي طبعا هنا ربما لابد من الإشارة أن الفكر المضاد للفكر الديني في منطقتنا كان يساريا أكثر منه ليبراليا.
While here by us the large majority approach that means the freedom mind was more sharp and more negative. It was negative. So the Eastern societies are mainly patriarchal, conservative societies. Therefore, and with some difference from a country to another, that is a part of their constitution, and Islam is the base of the constitution that is given legitimacy to their to the state, and it's related also affiliated to the Prophet Muhammad and to Ali bin Abi Talib. That's why they gave importance to rely on the religion and on keeping the religious conservatism in the country.
في كثير من الحالات تقدمت الحكومات بمشاريع قوانين مثلا فيما يتعلق.
Societies are very conservative. There is a lot of countries of states that have presented law drafts in the favor of women, but they were refused by the parliaments. So the elites, intellectual elites, and the leftist elites and the leftist parties, they are liberals, and the states or the governments, they are followed
بما فيها الأحزاب السياسية الإسلامية أو
by Islamic parties or the leaders of these parties, and the most fundamentalists are those called the religious intelligentsia, who are teaching the Islamic legislation in universities, or who are called the ulama, the scholars. That means the politicians are more pragmatic, but the intelligentsia are fundamentalists. So the political systems and the religion, most of these states were born during the tension between or the Cold War between the European countries and the Soviet Union.
صممت الأنظمة كل سياساتها وأدواتها السياسية والثقافية
This regime had planned all their politics and all their tools
لكن الأمور
as a leftist opposition. But things had changed later on, and then the opposition became Islamic opposition. And that has increased obviously with the Arabic Spring and in the role of the Islamists in the Arabic Spring.
المعاصر عندنا لأنه الليبرالية عندنا كانت صحيح في
But here I would like to point out that the lefts that they were symbolizing the freedom, while the liberals they were just the opposite. So the left parties, the countries they had to oppose against the left, the left had to choose either his opposition against the systems or against the Islam.
على سبيل المثال فإن المادة الأولى من الدستور العراقي تنص
The first article in the Iraqi constitution states that the Islam is the religion of the state.
في الدستور العراقي هناك يعني أشياء فيما يتعلق أو مواد تتعلق بهذا الموضوع تقول لا يجوز سن قانون يتعارض مع ثوابت أحكام الإسلام. هذا واحد.
It's not permissible to enact a law that contradicts the constant of the Islam. No law may be accepted that contradicts the principle of democracy. No law may be accepted that contradicts the basic rights and the freedoms stipulated in this constitution. How it's impossible. How can we find a law that not contradicts with Islam, with democracy and constitution at the same time, and the freedom and the freedom? The second article of the Iraqi constitution says this constitution grants the preservation of the Islamic identity of the majority of the Iraqi people. It also grants the full religious rights of all individuals to freedom, such as Christian, Yazidi, and Mandayans, and all the so the Mandayan and the Yazidi, they are just a special case. In Bahrain, the constitution states that the kingdom is an independent Arabic Islamic kingdom. In Tunis, it states that the Islam is the religion of the state, that Tunisia is a civil state based on citizenship. The constitution of Morocco states that the official and supreme religion of the state is Islam. And Morocco grants the freedom of religion to all. And the king is the prince of the believers. In the kingdom of Saudi Arabia is an Arab Islamic state with complete sovereignty. Its religion is Islam and its constitution is the book of God. is the book of God and the Sunnah of his messenger. The 6th article also says that citizens pledge allegiance to the king according to the book of God Almighty and the Sunnah of his messenger, and obey his hardship is. In Egypt, which is the largest country, the constitution ranged from recognizing that freedom for mutual and set since 1923. Changed by the constitution drawn up by Sadat in 1971, which referred that the state guarantee the freedom of belief. And for the Palestinian Authority, concerning the Palestinian Authority, in 1988, in the National Council, with the Treaty of Independence, that was written by the poet Mahmoud Darwish, that stated that Palestine is for a Palestinian, in which they develop their national and cultural identity. They enjoy complete equality in rights with their religious and political beliefs, and their human dignity is preserved under a parliamentary democracy based on freedom of opinion, care of the majority, of the minority. And after that, the Palestinian Basic Law came to stipulate in its article that Islam is the official religion in Palestine, and that is the source of legislation.
شاركت في الانتخابات فيها، يعني هذا النص انه الاسلام هو دين الدوله ولسائر الاديان السماويه احترامها وكذا، هي ماده وضعها العلمانيون بين مزدوجين في مجلس التشريع الفلسطيني. ناتي للواقع او بين الدستور والواقع. قد تكون للبعض ملاحظات على كثير من دساتير البلدان العربية فيما يتعلق.
Some may have comments on many of the constitutions of Arab countries
على أصحاب الآراء التي لا تنسجم مع ما هو
regard to freedom of belief.
أو مع أولئك الذين يخالفون الرواية الدينية بشكل أو بآخر. بمعنى
they are more open to those with opinion that are inconsistent with the prevailing of traditional understanding of religion. There is a lot of restrictions by governments in many countries for the groups who do not believe in what the majority believe, or who do not belong to the same religion, as what was happening in Saudi before the opening or so as what had happened in Saudi Arabia, used to happen in Saudi Arabia before the opening that was taken by the Saudi Crown Prince, and some people were arrested or if they were for different reasons. Some governments are very conservative and they don't accept any changement. And they are convinced, and some they do believe that the national unity doesn't allow them to exit from the tradition or from the religion. So
وبعض المواطنين الأصوليين تلك الفئات التي تستخدم سلاح التكفير ضد بعض من لا تتفق مع معتقداتهم.
In Egypt, for example, some people had been assassinated because of their opinions or as it happened with different personalities and intellects, as also attacks on the Coptic churches. There is sometimes some tolerance regarding the monotheist religions. In Egypt, there is a problem with the Baha'i, that there is a lot of restrictions and they are not allowed to be buried in Egypt. They have no graveyard. In Jordan, in Iraq, in Sudan, a lot of people, they are either jailed or they're arrested or even executed. In Sudan, for example, during the time of al-Bashir in Sudan, the implementation of the Islamic legislation on the people the bad relationship between governments and the political Islam, it's one of the attacks on the religious dignity, of the violation of freedom. It's an embarrassment to the religion. If the state, if the government answers or acts against the fundamentalists, so they accuse her of being against the Islam. With the Arabic Spring, after the Arabic Spring, a lot of systems, they took some positions, sharp positions. After the attack on the Tunisian thinker, so he was received by the Tunisian president. And also in Egypt, the Egyptian president who dared to say, the one who doesn't want to believe, he is free. That is making a big changement in the nature of the opposition, from the left opposition to the religious one. It's very obvious that the countries of the area with the Islamic majority, it recognizes or acknowledges the monotheist religions. In Iraq, there is the Sabiha religion. While they don't consider it neither as a religion nor as a sacred. In most of these countries, the non-Muslims, they are allowed to embrace Islam, and this is a beloved something very appreciated, as it used to happen in Saudi Arabia, when they used to organize feasts for those converting to the Islam. But if a Muslim converts to another religion, he's considered an apostate, and it's a crime. So apostasy is exiting from the nation, not only from the religion. So these people, they are sentenced sometimes to death, and also they are not allowed to get married. And if they are married, their wives, they are considered as widow.
في الذهن السائد. لذلك يجب العمل على تفهيم. تفضل
دكتور، استسمحك عذرا، نختصر قليلا.
انا بقي لي دقيقه
طيب،
واحده.
شكرا جزيلا.
تمام. اذا المرتد يعني يجب ان يستتاب كما يقال ويرجع عن ارتداده.
The apostate has to go back to his religion, to convert back.
غالبا ما يجري النقاش حول التعارض بين الحق في التعبير والذي يشمل على الأغلب توجيه نقد لأمور غالبا ما تكون.
There is always a complication between, an opposition between the freedom of thought and the freedom of belief. For the Muslims, criticizing the religion is more dangerous and more critical than criticizing the people themselves, as what happened in some newspapers that has criticized the religion. There is often a discussion about the conflict between right of expression, which often includes criticism of matters. For Muslims, criticizing their religion and its symbols is more sensitive than criticizing the people. So the Danish drawings and the French Charlie Hebdo caricature had a strong and violent impact against their administration.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور إياد، نشكرك على هذا الإسهاب وهذا المحتوى الغني جدا.
Thank you, Doctor, for your lecture, which is very rich.
صاحب السيادة المطران ويليام الشوملي، بس راح يصير تغيير إذا ممكن دكتور عمر عبد ربه، لأنه الأستاذ زياد الصائغ في عنده مشكلة في جنيف، فإذا ممكن يكون مباشرة لأنه في ظروف صعبة عنده، فلأنه هلأ وصل على جنيف وفي عنده اجتماع، فلأنه إحنا طولنا في المحاضرات، فهل ممكن دكتور عمر تكون محاضرة الأستاذ زياد مباشرة بعد محاضرة سيدنا ويليام الشوملي؟
طبعا دكتور يوسف، ولا يهمك.
طبعا. أوكي، شكرا جزيلا. بسعدني في هذا المساء أن نستضيف شخصية مميزة، شخصية كنسية. أولا هو صديق للقاء منذ أن ولد اللقاء، ومنذ أن كنا جميعا شبابا في اللقاء. المطران ويليام الشوملي، النائب العام والنائب البطريركي للقدس وفلسطين، وهو شخصية صريحة وفكر حر وفكر مستنير. محاضرته حرية الفكر والمعتقد والضمير في الكنيسة.
It's a pleasure to receive the Bishop Shomali.
شكرا دكتور يوسف زكنون، شكرا لإدارة مركز اللقاء، شكرا لUPF.
Thank you for.
وشكرا للمحاضرين اللي سبقوني واللي أنا بعتبرهم قامات فكرية كبيرة. أنا استفدت كثير.
I benefit a lot from being here, and I will exclude my speech about the freedom of religion, freedom of thought. according to the Catholic Church that I belong to. I will speak generally about the freedom and its relation with religion. Then I will move to the freedom of thought, freedom of religious thought, and I will talk about freedom of religion, freedom of conscience to believe or not to believe or to choose the suitable religion. As a short brief for freedom, I think freedom is a blessing from God, who created the human being according to his image, with the will and mind to think and look for his happiness, and for the freedom to fulfill its goal, we have to use it according to what God wants. Why did God give us freedom? So we have to use it according to God's will. As an example, if I bought an equipment, electric, I have to use it according to a manual. And if I bought medicine, I have to use it according to the prescription of the doctor or of the company, when and how. Or this will not be good for my health. I want to talk about freedom and the social human. Someone talk about I want to talk about the social human being who use his freedom among the society that give and take with. It is not enough, but unless be used with some other four values. The truth is above humanity. God is the reality, and the justice, common good, and love. These four values complete the freedom. And our freedom is not just it is for a purpose, to reach the reality of common good and other branches of this main. So whenever human being do good and become justice, he will become more freedom, and vice versa. John Paul said that who live in sin will be a slave of sin. So the human being will become the slave of evil if he do evil. The freedom of thought is the most important of all freedoms, and there will be no any kind of development economically or politically without this kind of freedom. And on condition not to discriminate between freedom and the four values that I mentioned before, I want to connect by freedom and the revelation, because I'm speaker the religious man. God revealed himself through the holy books. Yes, freedom need to be the revelation light the way for freedom, and God teach the human being that he doesn't know, and we have experience in other religion the human efforts to reach God, which didn't lead human being to God directly. And this religion before the revelation taught some strange things about just like reincarnation or regard some animals are holy animals and magic, or about the methodology in old Greece. And they believe that sometime God hate human being and did some bad things for him. These Muslim, Jewish, and Christian do not believe in such things because they believe that God is the source of love. The thought freedom is an absolute freedom related with love and common good. But some fundamentalists believe that it is impossible that God could talk with people, and it is impossible to know what is behind what is like the metaphysics, what is behind the nature. We believe that if God is excluded from human life, will leave some bad side effects on human life, and he might create some rules that is against the human nature. If we talk about like abortion, there are some law about these things, and this is a kind of destruction for the family. These laws, without regarding God, without regarding belief, could lead us to ignorance. Is there any freedom for religious thought? Because the church passed by different periods, freedom of choose your religion, freedom of thought, but for sometimes we have crisis in the life of church. There is a strong relation between mind and belief. Since God comes from God and belief come from God, there must not be contradiction between religious thinking and normal thinking, because belief could give human being things that he cannot find in the normal mental thinking. We think about belief cannot be over the human mind. The mind leads people to understand belief and understand also the word of God. But when I talk about the crisis that happened to the church, I have to talk about it. And Galileo couldn't find science freedom or freedom of expression when he said that the earth move around the sun and the sun is not moving around the earth as we understood. So it is mentioned that in the sun stopped while the war between. So they understood that Galileo is against revelation and against religion, and he was sent to court, and they pushed him to retreat from his thought. After the court, he said, if they believe or not, the earth move and not the sun, and he retreat externally, but internally he kept his understanding. Why are we telling this? Because if there is misunderstanding for the religious or for the revelation for the holy books, and the holy books are not a scientific book that we can get or we can know about science from it. There is a poem. We know that poetry has its own rules. And he said to the sun, please stop. Just he doesn't give us a lesson about astrology. And when we say sun appears, this does not mean that the sun is moving, but the earth is moving. The development in religious thought realized that Jalilu had given a good reality and discovered something that is very important, and we should thank him for that. After I told about freedom of thought, I can say that now the church allow the freedom of thought. There are some annual meeting in the Catholic Church. We to listen to the bishop's viewpoints, and this meeting take place every 2 years globally, and the bishops speak freely and talk about the freedom of religion is there and it should be there. If we oppress others, this will lead to fundamentalist or extremism. And the people who talk about me, they talk clearly about freedom, and they and there is some retreatment in the religious, and there are some oppression for some minorities in some other countries, even in Europe, where there are some groups cannot allow to freely express themselves about their religion. We know that religious freedom is allowed, but on condition not to deal with others negatively. And religious freedom of conscience, Dr. Borkosi talked about that in the Catholic Church, after the declaration, it gave total freedom to human beings to choose the religion that he thinks is the truth. It is free for Christians to convert to other religion, and it is free for any other person to convert to other religions. But this should be freely done and without oppression or some interference from others. The speech about religious freedom mentioned about the Pope John Paul II about the human dignity. I will take just brief of it. And the main principle, the more important principle in the Catholic Church, that human being cannot accept the call of God without freedom. And we cannot push others to believe in God against their will. And the opposite is true also. For us, for anyone, it is free that if you want to convert from the Catholic Church to another religion or another church. The last point is the limitation of religious freedom or the borders of religious freedom, because it is on condition do not to harm others or the common good. So my rights stop when the right of others starts, and the civil society should protect himself from anything that being used under the title of religious freedom. We should not support a group against another group. Finally, the freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of religion is a gift from God to human being, to all human society, that they attain happiness and prosperity. And we have to raise people to use freedom in a good way, so as not to violate freedom. And thank you so much.
Thank you, William.
Mr. William,
Bishop
you
William.
deal with time accurately.
ويليام هو راعي يقوم
Bishop William is a shepherd that is assuming his role as the good shepherd. He served in all the parishes. He's one of the thinkers of the church that is enriching us. And now I move to Mr. Ziad Al-Sayr, consultant in general politics. Who has a very rich biography. Welcome.
المحاضرة وسائل الإعلام ووسائل التواصل الاجتماعي وتأثيرها على العلاقات الإنسانية والعيش الواحد. تفضل أستاذ زياد.
مساء الخير دكتور يوسف، مساء الخير للجميع. أعتذر عن تأخري على
Welcome, Dr. Ziad. I'm really sorry for being late.
وأعتذر كمان عن
And I'm sorry
طلبي أن أدخل الآن مباشرة لأني مضطر
that I should talk before my turn, because I have to join another meeting. I have first to thank the UPF and Liqa Center about this meeting, which had a very nice title. We should agree that each society has its own
الشعبوية والقومية المتطرفة بموازاة
the extremism
الأخلاقية المؤسسة
and the kind of misunderstanding which should be based on a clear understanding. Generally, sometimes people could misuse or misunderstand a thing that lead to common good and could use violence, which lead us. The thing that is going on in front of our eyes between Russia and Ukraine, what is happening also in Palestine and all over the world, now moved to the freedom of thought is an important pillar for society from here, everyone has his own favor as a member of society, from a political viewpoint, social viewpoint, or educational viewpoint, that the space is allowed for all these to work together. Since we talk about the social media, and it is important to distinguish between the thing that how do we use media, kind of commercial, or just to spread some kind of thought. If we agree that there must be some kind of borders for freedom, what is the manner that could lead to respect human dignity? First, social media has some kind of dangerous side effects, and because it transcends time and space, and it was not based on the nature of this social media. Like there is some contradiction. In the social media, there is always kind of dialogue. The democracy option had never been victorious, because ideologically so among the social media there is no freedom, and it depends upon how you have a loud voice that could be heard by others, regardless of if you are talking about the truth or not.
على أنه جزء من التأقلم الطبيعي. مخاطر الأدلجة والتنميط
The danger of that affect the religious of freedom in the social media is give an impression that we live harmoniously, and this might not be true.
الدفاعية والهجومية. إن تفسخ ديكتاتورية التنميط والقمع.
The dictatorship of oppression dealing with two parallel lines cannot meet in the social media. The first one is based on a healthy democracy. There is competition and there is some privacy. And the other one,
فيما بين متميزين في الفكر
always attacking others, which make each one of them appear like a god or a victim. The social media looks like against freedom.
على الرغم من مخاطر الأدلجة والتنميط وسفسطائية الأبولوجيتيكية، يجب الاعتراف بأن الإعلام ووسائل
We should agree that the social media is had a strong impact in the development of society and freedom of thought. This also has two levels, because they could find a chance for some thought that appear themselves or announce themselves while they have been for a long time hidden.
الإعلام ووسائل التواصل الاجتماعي تلاقح الحقائق بنسبيتها، ليس من حقيقة مطلقة.
There is no absolute truth.
ومن الواضح بمكان
And it is clear that all kind of social media help to declare that no one have the whole truth,
عن مكامن قوة أي منها،
and it could reveal the weak points or the good points of each thought. But also you have to agree that dealing with others who have a negative viewpoint that other than ours
عملت على تهشيم الآخر وتهميشه بما
yes,
جعل
some like try to destroy others, and it changed the social media to a kind of hell.
التي تنقاد لها هذه المنصات ليس من خلال من يعاينها ويعايشها
So even those who direct this social media, the common values and the common good, you have to move from the
يحتاج إنجاز مصالحة مع معنى وجودنا، فلا يكفي انتظام القول بالمصالح المشتركة لتجاوز خطاب الكراهية وتعميم الفوبيا، بل من الملح
it is very important to recreate
للتنوع
common human values and social justice and the responsible freedom. Here we have to choose
الفضاء العام.
We should recreate the social media as a common good for everyone, and this privacy should not become reason for wars and for crises. The closed belief
مارسته منظومات وأنظمة في الإعلام ووسائل التواصل الاجتماعي لاغتيال حرية الفكر والمعتقد فكفى.
And some
في مقاربة دور
social media also use its ways like by destroying others or killing others. And now I'm going to conclude that since all humanity live together, there is a big challenge that we have to
والسيكولوجية والعقائدية والأنثروبولوجية
for the basis and the its identity. And if we stay in this technical issue, we might drawn in
Thank you, Dr. Ziad, for this lecture. Our heart and our mind are always with you, especially during this difficult situation. that you're leaving. Now we have Dr. Omar Abd Rabbu, the professor, doctor of archaeology and Islamic studies in the University of Bethlehem, a friend of the AL-Liqa in his studies and researches, especially about the archaeological sites in Jerusalem. Welcome.
دور التربية.
The role of education and the freedom of belief and in Palestine. The role of Palestinian universities in the freedom of belief and mind. Let us remind that in the United Nations article that stipulate that everyone has the freedom of belief and mind, and he's free to choose the mind or belief, and pluralism is allowed alone or with a group, in front or in public or alone. That was said in the Declaration of the United Nations, and it's concerning religious beliefs and non-religious beliefs. In this context, one should introduce the belief and religion. The freedom of man is one of the rights of man that was acknowledged by all the international declarations. It's concerning the individual freedom, like the freedom of opinion, which are basic rights for every human being. In 2004, the rules had evolved, and a new declaration was announced, the cultural freedom, for human cultural freedom. And this declaration was put that the human freedom of culture in a pluralist world, because it's very important, because it grants the human freedom and the human of people of different cultures. Building the culture is related to religion, to universities. It's how to form the cultural society, to enrich the mutual respect, tolerance. If universities are prohibited to spread the culture of human rights, what will come instead? The teaching system will become useless. The universities, they should spread the values of human rights in the pluralist societies. My friends, the other lecturers who have presented and referred to famous philosophers. Here I refer to Ibn Khaldun and his role in the teaching in life.
التي تجعل الإنسان قادر على المفاضلة وبين الخير والشر.
By Ibn Khaldun, there is the possibility for man to choose between the good and the bad. And that is able to be spread through the institutions, educational institutions. So the difference, the pluralism of minds in one society should be related to the behavior in order to have this subject complete with the human right. And this is what we do in the Palestinian University, and especially in Bethlehem University, especially the things that are related to human rights. It's related to the knowledge and the behavior by the receiver, his rights and the rights of the others. And these virtues are very important. And the educational system and the interaction between man and his environment.
سأتناول ذلك لاحقا في هذه المداخلة. فبالتالي المؤسسات التعليمية هي القادرة على نشر مفاهيم، مش فقط نشر هذه المفاهيم وكذلك تربية.
These institutions, they are in charge of raising and initiating and spreading these values.
تحمل المسؤولية
and the arrival of man, to enable man to assume responsibilities. The elements of the teaching operation. So the teaching method should always be improved and modernized according to the beliefs of freedom and equality.
عن قيم ومفاهيم حقوق الإنسان والتفكير الناقد البناء.
So the rights of human, of man, and the difference between the good and bad. The educational institutions, whether are they faculties or universities, they contribute in building the society in any country, and they have a very important impact, and they contribute in the evolution of the and enable the society to face all the challenges.
وبالتالي دور الجامعات لا يجب أن يقتصر على فقط التدريس، يجب أن يكون لها
and its role, it should not be limited just to the teaching. It should be related to the building of the society and the serving of humanity and helping in the evolution on the local level and on the national level. And that is the role of universities in the world.
العلوم الإنسانية والاجتماعية في
So
كليات
the human sciences in Palestine universities,
الفلسفة
history, philosophy, archaeology, why the human sciences, human and social sciences in this university?
الفلسطينية وغيرها من الجامعات
Because these sciences are the important elements that assume an important role in spreading these understandings and its context.
العلوم الإنسانية هي التي تسهم في بناء جيل إذا تم مناقشة طبعا
It builds
وقيم
a new generation
حقوق الإنسان في محتويات هذه المساقات، يصبح هذا الجيل المتلقي قادر على
this year or this generation that has received these principles will be open-minded, will have will work for dignity, and the student will be able to look forward for a better future.
ومحور مداخلاتنا في هذه المؤتمر هو حقوق الإنسان وبالتحديد
enlarge the culture of the students and of the people.
بالطبع المؤسسات تلعب دور أساسي في
The institutions, they have an important role in granting this right.
حتى المنظمات الحقوقية التي تعمل في مجال حقوق الإنسان.
Even the organizations of the human rights.
وبالتحديد الجامعات والمدارس لا يمكن نشر هذه الثقافة.
They know they cannot spread in some universities this culture. And here we have the role of the educational universities, whether in faculties, schools, or universities.
مبادئ تدريس حقوق الإنسان.
So the declaration of teaching of human rights that focused
في البرامج التعليمية والمساقات التعليمية التي تدرس في هذه المؤسسات.
That focused on these principles.
ضروري وبرأيي إنه يكون في تناغم بين المؤسسة التعليمية وبين المجتمع.
It should be always in harmony between the educational institution and the society. Universities, they are not isolated from their society. They are a part of the society.
دورها في تعزيز هذه القيم.
It should assume its role in enriching or in spreading these principles It's now teaching about human rights
وجامعة بيتلهام جزء من
that are related to the progress about the human rights.
الكثير في هذا المجال وبالتالي اشتغلت الجامعة مع غيرها من الجامعات الفلسطينية على
The university has collaborated with other universities to reach their goal with other high institution in order to improve the culture of human rights in the Palestinian society, because all that is got through teaching and especially the tolerance, the respect of other religions, and the dignity of the other. It's very
تطرح الجامعات الفلسطينية مساقات العلوم الإنسانية بشكل عام.
It's very important in establishing that in the mind of students with a critical mind. They believe in pluralism and mutual respect. Maybe the different sectors like art, archaeology, history aim always to build a balanced personality and enable the students to believe in the rights of a human, to believe in human rights and to accept the rights of the other. And to practice and to study to understand the political studies and economical ones. For example, the idea about or to study about the history of the presence or of the state and how they can contribute positively in the life of the society. Able to create trends towards the civil society, the role of the youth to protect the society against the tyrannism, exclusivism.
بالطبع كل الجامعات الفلسطينية تطرح مساق
They should against tyrannism, against exclusion. The respect of the human mind. Creating an opening onto the human culture, refusing
تهذيب النفس الإنسانية والانفتاح على الثقافات الأخرى
refusing inclusion,
وبالتالي احترام الآخرين
the respect of the others who are different culturally. That leads to an improvement in the human mind generally.
مساقات الديانات في الجامعات الفلسطينية سواء كان الدين المسيحي أو الإسلامي.
The religions in the universities and the Palestinian universities
القيم المشتركة الإنسانية والإيمانية
present
بين الأديان.
a draft that shows the importance
طبعا ذلك يؤدي إلى تأصيل وتقوية قيم التعايش والحوار والتعاون المشترك على أرضية احترام
of the tolerance and that
وبالتالي حماية حق الإنسان في العبادة
enroots the relationship, the bond among them, and everyone has the rights to practice his belief. All that contribute and
وبالتالي الوصول إلى إنسان متسامح بعيد عن ثقافة
contribute in building freedom and tolerance away from fundamentalists.
لكن هناك سؤال مهم.
But there is a question.
خلينا نقول حضور هذه الجامعات
is the presence of these societies, of these universities, through its education and teaching that is related to the human rights generally.
على الرغم من الظروف التي
These teachings influence, are they the impact of these teachings, is it obvious in the society?
طبعا بعض البلدان العالم مثل آسيا
Some countries like Asia and Africa still enduring suffering, still suffering from the weakness of its and the presence of its universities and from the teaching of human sciences, because we are still seeing conflicts based on religion or mind, freedom of mind, as mentioned our bishop, the Bishop Shomali. Even in Europe, there is a lot of issues in Europe, which is considered the cradle of tolerance. They still have some restrictions, religious restrictions, for example, against the hijab, against the cross, and other. These conflicts, intellectual conflict and religious conflict, is still existing in most of the countries surrounding us, in most of the countries surrounding Palestine. There is some signs or recommendations that they are taught in our universities that is focusing on these values that are related to man and to human sciences. The progress should be continuous. Discussion and dialogues should be ongoing.
تركيز على أدب الحوار.
And I think they should focus on the ethic of dialogue. All the universities, in our universities and the Arabic universities.
يعني المقصود في ذلك ليس فقط مطلوب من هذه الجامعات طرح مساقات تركز على هذه القيم، لكن مطلوب كذلك إجراء نشاطات مرتبطة ببعض الدوائر اللي مرتبطة.
So these universities are not only asked to teach and to introduce subjects that are related to this topic, but also to organize activities and raise awareness. And they should show, they must show the danger of fanatism through living example, through examples that we have in the Arabic world, in the African world.
ونتائج هذه المخاطر
and the results of these risks and the reject of pluralism and so they should focus on the dignity of man, on tolerance, on the acceptance of the others. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Dr. Omar Abdul. Hoping that the universities will have an important role, greater and greater, especially in this world that is complicated and tough, especially when mind and thinkers are subject to all kinds of persecution. And we know a lot of people, and there is a lot of examples about that.
الأسئلة بعد أمامنا مجموعة من الأسئلة تكرم بها عدد من المشاركين موجهة للمحاضرين، فإذا مع السؤال الأول.
مساء الخير للجميع، وأيضا صباح الخير لجميع متابعينا بأنحاء العالم. أود بداية أن أشكر جميع متحدثين على مشاركاتهم الغنية.
I would like to thank all the speakers.
أول سؤال Sirens Madeline لدكتور يان فايجل.
First question.
طبعا رح يكون في ترجمة مباشرة. What can we do as an international organization to ensure that citizens around the globe have freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression? This question goes directly to Dr. Yan Feigl.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Please.
and also I'm glad that I could watch panelists and the whole conference. The questions from Jacob, Terence, Madeline, I understand is my duty and opportunity to respond. What can we do as international organization on FORB? I think the most important beginning is awareness raising, to let people know and understand why this is so important and why we should do our best for protection and promotion of freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and freedom of religion. And other freedoms. This basic one is forum internum. And if this is protected, as I said in my presentation, then other freedoms have a chance to be protected as well. Freedom of opinion, of expression, of assembly, freedom of association. If this forum internum is not respected, how can we expect forum externum, internum externum be respected? So the answer is education and cooperation with the like-minded. And communication on importance. I like the combination which sounds in English in 3 words: hardworking, team working, and networking. I must do something reasonable, credible, creative. Then team working means in my organization, in my team, in my neighborhood, to do the same with like-minded. And then international, even global networking with like-minded makes things really more dynamic, more hopeful. So believe me or not, but history is made mostly by so-called creative minorities. So don't be afraid that you are in, let's say, minority. But if you are creative and consistent, coherent minority, you have chance to make history, to win. So this is my answer, or rather encouragement, to Jacob Terence Madeline.
So I guess, Dr. Figel, you answered all the questions that has asked. I sent you by email. Actually, 4 questions.
There were 4. So if I may to add a bit still on the same line, because there were similar questions. What relief can we bring? And then something on peace. I think the core of answer is culture of human dignity. Culture, which means mentality, behavior, values, traditions, where human dignity is seen as a pillar, as a departure point, as objective and criterion of our acting, our doing. And a culture of human dignity basically is based on 2 ethical principles. One is called golden and one is silver. Silver ethical principle since ancient times says, don't do the others what you don't want others to do unto you. It's a kind of negative reciprocity. Don't do. And the golden one is do to others what you want others to do unto you. And the top of these positive qualities is love, human love. What would be humanity without love? Only intellectual animals. So these 2 principles are very just, righteous, fair, and very important for a culture of human dignity. We should give voice to the voiceless, defense of the defenseless. God did not invite us to protect God because he is almighty. He is almighty. He invited us to protect the defenseless, the voiceless, the most vulnerable, the innocent. And we should learn more about good and common good to distinguish what is evil, what is good. It's a basic of ethics. And then common good is good for you, for me, it's win-win. And last not least, peace is always fruit of justice. Justice is beautiful mother of a child called peace. So if we want peace, we should work for justice, feed justice into human minds and human hearts. And there are many ways how to do it: equal opportunity for all, equality against law, reward those who show solidarity, who deserve it, punish those who are criminals, to stop the criminality or evil doing. And this is called ethics of responsibility. And last idea to share, rate of our responsibility, of yours and mine, is given by the rate of influence. Everybody has some influence, at least to say something, to pray, to unite. Everybody has influence, and therefore everybody has also a responsibility. So basically, that's my answer.
So thank you. Would you like to comment on the question of how can we as an international peace organization help to promote peace across the globe, enhance peace building and peacekeeping so that a Cold War like the Russia-Ukraine-Putin war does not repeat itself from the other parts of the global village?
Yeah, I said at the beginning that peace is never given, never granted, never automatic. It must be effort of majority or at least creative minorities who get then support of majority in society. It's crucially important. Education for peace is the good beginning. Usually in life, we educate for something like mathematics, physics, natural sciences, okay, fine, technology. But the most important issues in life are those which are non-material, non-measurable. I think it was Einstein who said there are things in life who are measurable but doesn't count. And then there are things which are not measurable, but they count a lot. Like already I mentioned, love, hope, justice, and peace. We cannot measure in human dignity, in liters, in kilograms, how much peace, how much dignity, but it matters a lot. So our generation and next generation and next, I mean, children of our children, should learn from the beginning what is the most important in life and what is secondary and tertiary and just condition for life. So I would strongly advise education, 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 but based on values which starts with human dignity for all.
Thank you, Dr. Fiegel. Another question also for you from Peter May. He says that there's a concern, which are the formula of moral and ethical duties to bring all believers and unbelievers together, set up a common basis to discover a living God.
A living God can be found either through creation, through nature and creation, and or which is much more human, or I would say recommended way, is through brotherhood, sisterhood. Only when we share this basic human affiliation and understanding that we are all one human family, then we sort of represent one God. If we don't behave in that sense, then how people, especially non-believers, can recognize there is one Father, one Creator, one God. So it's about our example, the inspiration, which then helps to find that there is somebody who showed the utmost example of creativity, utmost example of love, who is absolute, while we are partial, limited, but still inspired by these deepest qualities of human being. Again, I think that culture of human dignity, whether it's coming from Christian inspiration or from Quranic, Muslim culture, or Jewish, or even in Buddhist culture, you can find some messages about dignity of human person. We should come to this knowledge that human person has unmeasurable value and is invited towards its perfection, self-perfection. Why? in order to fulfill itself. Nobody can become happy alone, isolated. Everybody needs somebody. So we are relational beings. We need somebody. And the deepest, the strongest, most fruitful relation between persons is called love. And I believe that God is love.
And last question to you, Dr. Fiegel, from Pedro Morales. He's asking, what can we do as individuals or as communities to promote equal citizenship? A democratically elected leader may promote the betterment of the individuals who voted for him over those who voted against him. So how to counter that type of situation?
Again, very easily, don't do the others, and then do the others what you want others to do unto you. Of course, we are different. We have different opinions. And when we vote differently, but somebody gets majority. And he gets majority not only for his part of portfolio, for his voters, but for all. And that's important principle before elections, after elections. And then application of equality against law is a principle of equal citizenship. I was very pleased when I visited still in time of war in Iraq. I visited leaders of different communities. It was near Mosul, where I met in Erbil actually Patriarch Louis Raphael Sacco. And then in Najaf, in other part of Iraq, one of Grand Ayatollahs, Al-Najafi, who used the same language. So two religious leaders, one Christian and one Shia, spoke about Iraq of future as a civil state, not Islamic Republic of Iraq, but civil state with equal citizenship for all. And I liked it because when religious leaders use secular label and kind of secular character of state is a future for them, this is the best answer, because fair secular state is a blessing for all, majority and minorities, for different groups, for believers and non-believers, but it must be fair, pluralist, respectful to religions. Unfair secular state, there are such. Stalinist Czechoslovakia was unfair secular state. North Korea is unfair totalitarian state. Unfair secular state promotes secularism as ideology and impose this ideology over its citizens. It is not based on equal citizenship. So I think that winners and losers in elections should understand that politically it's competition, not totality. And then application of law, just law towards all in society is the way how to organize freedom orderly. Freedom needs some system, and this is the best system ever. Equal, fair, dignified citizenship for all.
Thank you so much for answering in depth. هلا مباشرة في سؤال للمطران ويليام الشوملي، والسؤال كالتالي: What are the limits of freedom of speech? أسأله بالعربي. سيدنا مش عم نسمعك، الميكروفون مطفى.
Okay, it is better to answer in English for the majority of those who are present or in Arabic.
It doesn't matter, really.
Okay. I mentioned that freedom is a gift given by God that I should use according to the parameters that God wants from his gift. The other parameters or values that orient and in some way limit freedom of speech are four that I mentioned, four with their affiliations. One is truth. I cannot think against truth. Now, freedom of speech is not absolute, but truth is absolute. So it should be really subject to truth. I cannot say or think something against truth. The other value is justice. The third value is the common good. I cannot, in the name of freedom of speech, go against the common good of the society.
So, هناك 4 حقائق: الحقيقة، العدالة.
It is love. So any truth, any freedom of speech which goes against love, it becomes defamation. And defamation, or I don't know other names, is really a bad thing. So if freedom of speech is oriented, even I can say limited, by the four values, this freedom is very useful and it is necessary. Thank you.
شكرا سيدنا. في كمان سؤال موجه إليك وموجه أيضا للدكتور إياد البرغوثي، نفس السؤال. Can we in Palestine give all religions equal rights and equal responsibilities as we live in the Holy Land?
دكتور إياد، بتحب تبدأ أنت؟
تفضل سيدنا، تفضل.
نبدأ معك سيدنا وبعدين مع دكتور إياد.
أوكي. هلا كون يعني أي دولة ديمقراطية مفروض تحترم جميع الأديان اللي فيها. مبدئيا يعني نحن ننتظر ونتوقع إنه
We are waiting and expecting that the Palestinian state to consider Muslims who are the majority, to give the Islam an important dimension, but at the same time there is the Christians as a minority, because they are existing in Palestine since the early centuries. Actually, I believe that the Palestinian state respect the Palestinians. We are pampered in the Council of Legislation. We have a person who used to work. Now they are not working, but who used to work. But what I ask for
يكون في تقبل متبادل واحترام.
To have in the Palestinian society a reciprocal or a mutual acceptance according to the principles that we talk about before, the respect of the other, the justice. Generally in the Middle East, there is a living way which doesn't exist, that shows the bad.
يعني البيت له دور أساسي، فأنا اللي بطلب منه هو الاحترام المتبادل.
That shows something in the
دكتور إياد، شو رأيك
in the upbringing, something bad in the upbringing of children, maybe about behavior. Myself, I believe that the history of the Palestinian resistance is an honor for every Palestinian. And there is no Palestinian and minority and majority that suits politicians.
المكونات بغض النظر عن العدد.
Palestinian society is not completed unless
المتبادل والتسامح
its components are present.
أساس يعني لو
أنا is important, is the basic. According to me, the belief has no priority, any priority. It has no any priority.
معنا بس وراء من فضلكم ما عندنا بس إمكانية لسؤال واحد لأنه
We have just one question.
فإذا راح أروح لآخر سؤال لدكتور عمر عبد
Last question to Dr. عبد ربو.
الأستاذ جوزيف حسبون تفضل وسأل.
Mr. Youssef Hasboun, he
Yeah.
commented
Hi, my
that
friend.
actually our schools
راح أرجع أعيد عملياً مدارسنا تلقينية
actually our schools
فيها كل مظاهر التفكير النقدي والتحليلي وبالتالي
our schools are
هم منتوج هذا النظام المقيت ولهذا يعاني الطلاب في السنوات الأولى في الجامعة من صعوبة في التأقلم مع الفكر الحر وتحمل المسؤولية الذاتية في عملية التعليم غير التلقيني. وعليه هل يمكن للجامعات الفلسطينية التي تعاني من هذه المنظومة أن تؤثر على الوزارة لتغيير نظام التعليم القائم وإدخال الفلسفة مثلاً أو آليات البحث العلمي وغيرها؟ وإذا كان الجواب لا فهل من بديل؟
شكرا.
So it's critical about the teaching system in universities that reminded the students that they suffer at the beginning, and whether there is a possibility to introduce the philosophy in these institutions.
في المدارس قبل الجامعات وكيف تقدم هذه المواد للطلبة. في الواقع هذا جزء من معاناة أساتذة الجامعات أثناء قدوم الطلبة بعد إنهائهم المدرسة إلى الجامعة. يعني بحكم تجربتي وجودي في جامعة بيتلحم بأخذ منا فترة طويلة حتى أقلم الطالب على مسائل مرتبطة بكيفية القراءة وكيفية السؤال المرتبط بفهم المقروء وكل ذلك. صحيح يجب أن ودائما أشرت يعني في المداخلة يجب تحديث هذه المساقات ويجب اختيار كذلك أسلوب نقل المعلومات للطلاب. أسلوب تلقين.
So it's concerning the teaching. So teaching should make a step forward, should know a progress, the way of thinking, of asking, of analyzing. The students, they reach university, and so they have to initiate them about the analytical and about the methodological research. And professors like Dr. Yousef and others, they work hard to initiate them. The focus on critical analyze. To enable them to assimilate the freedom of rights, the respect of the other, the respect of pluralism. And these students one day they will consider all the Palestinian society as one society. That is done, that is built in school and at the university. This target is built at school and at the university. Students should be prepared for this critical analysis. And this is our duty towards our students to evolve their critical spirit.
يعني بصراحة الكل شكر جميع المحاضرين على غنى محاضراتهم فعلا وغنى مداخلاتهم. متأسفة إنه ما قدرتش أعمل تعليق على أجوبتكم، ولكن هلا بترككم مع دكتور يوسف. شكرا جزيلا لكم جميعا.
اوكي، شكرا مجددا دكتور توماس وولش، دكتور يان فيجل، دكتور اياد البرغوثي، دكتور عمر عبد ربه، الدكتور رائد عبد المسيح، والسيدنا المطران ويليام الشوملي، والأستاذ زياد الصائغ. كانت أمسية فكرية رائدة.
Thank you for all the lecturers. It was a great evening. We will never hesitate to deal with complicated subjects that are related to people, to society, and to our daily life. And a great thank to Bishop Munib, to all the bishops, to all the lecturers. Great thanks. The last word to Dr. Thomas.
Okay, just very briefly, because so much has been said, I just want to congratulate you, Dr. Zaknoun, and the panelists, the AL-Liqa Center, the University of Bethlehem, and for this truly stimulating and very high-level, world-class discussion and conversation. So I applaud everyone. I think so. I just extend my congratulations. I look forward to our ongoing collaboration together. I thank Bishop Younan for his mentorship and wisdom in guiding this process. I also just want to say a word to Bernadette Moura, to Sunny Patterson, David Fraser Harris, our two translators, Francois and Tariq, and I'm thrilled, and I learned so much. So thank you. I turn it back to you, Dr. Zaknoun.
مجددا تقديرنا وشكرنا الجميع، وشكر خاص لكل الذين عملوا على
Again, a great thank to all the lecturers, and especially for those that they work behind the coulisses, the translators and the team, all the team. Our next meeting is on 27.
تسجل كلها وتنشر على صفحات المركز. مساءكم
on 27 May.
Thank you. شكرا جزيلا.
أوراقكم. Please send
خلينا
all
نشوفك سيدنا منيب.
send all
Thank you.
يعطيكم العافية. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا.
دكتور إياد
شكرا
بنشوفك.
جزيلا.
حرم الله بنشوفك.
سلامات.
Shukran.
شكرا.